Hi GOR, this is Unit 6, Lesson 4, and today we're going to use Trig to find missing angles. So it's done a little bit differently than the missing sides are done. So let's look at two simple equations that you should be able to solve. So I want to solve for x. I have 2x equals 14. This is 2 times x, so I do the opposite. The opposite of multiplication is to divide, so I divide both sides by 2. And then for b, I have x squared equals 9. The opposite of squared is to take the square root. So I take the square root of both sides to get x by itself, and the square root of 9 is 3. Okay, so how am I going to solve for sine of x equals 1/2? I have to get the x by itself. So I have to get rid of the sine. I have to do the inverse. All right, so I need to do the inverse. The inverse is another button on your calculator. I don't know if you noticed them, but above the sine button is this button that says sine to the -1. That's the inverse. So it's above the sine button. If you remember from your table of trig values that we did, the sine of 30 equals 1/2. So if I have sine of x equals 1/2, I want to get 30 as an answer. So I already know the answer. Let's look at our calculator. Again, make sure that your calculator is in degrees, all right? And look at my sine, cosine, tangent. Above each of them is that inverse in blue. So I have sine -1, cosine -1, tangent -1. So I'm going to hit second, sine, okay? And I'm going to do 1/2, 1 divided by 2. Oh, and there's a problem, and the problem is my calculator is not in degrees. I forgot I reset my calculator. So you always want to make sure that your calculator is in degrees, which is what I told you to do, but I forgot that I had reset mine. So let's try it again. So second, sine, and I hit 1 divided by 2, and now I get my 30 degrees. So that's my answer. Okay, so if I'm looking here at I have the directions for doing that right here, but basically when I want to solve sine of x equals 1/2, we need to do the inverse of sine, which is called the arc sine, which is that button sine -1. So this is how it's working. So if I'm looking right here, sine of x equals 1/2. I want to get rid of sine, so I do the opposite of sine is that inverse. They write arc sine, but it's that sine -1 button. So those cancel out, but whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other side. So basically, in order to solve this, what you're doing is you're doing sine to the -1, that's the inverse, 1 divided by 2. And that's how you get x equals 30. So that's how it looks like in your calculator. And these are the directions right here in the little box. Again, make sure that your calculator is in degree mode, which I forgot to do. Once you put it in degree mode, it should stay that way. I'm using the calculator on my iPad, so I had closed it out, and when I reopened it, it reset itself. All right, so let's look at a real life kind of example. I want to find the measure of the angle measure from the boy to the top of the tree. So I'm trying to find this measure right here. I'm going to call it x. It's an angle. The 2 is opposite, and the 4 is adjacent. So because of that, remember SOHCAHTOA. I'm going to use tangent because I have opposite and adjacent. So it's going to be tangent of x equals 2 over 4. Now to solve this, to get x by itself, anytime x is the angle, anytime you're trying to find the angle, you're always going to use that inverse button. So tan -1, 2 divided by 4, and that's what's going in your calculator. Second, tan, which gives you tan -1, 2 divided by 4, and that gives me 26.57 degrees. That's the angle measure. All right, so anytime you're trying to find the angle, when the angle is the thing you don't know, you have to get rid of the tan, and the way you do that is doing tan -1 on both sides. Okay, so basically you do tan -1 on the left, which cancels the tan out, and you do tan -1 on the right. I usually don't write the tan, that inverse on the left, but that's what's happening. All right, let's look at a few more problems here. So I have this angle here, angle A. This 20 is the hypotenuse because it's across from the right angle. The 13 is next to that angle, so that's adjacent. And again, if you want to write SOHCAHTOA at the top of your paper so you know which one to use. Since I have adjacent and hypotenuse, I'm going to use cosine of A equals adjacent over hypotenuse. I don't have the angle. The angle is the thing that I'm trying to find. So I'm going to do the inverse. So I'm taking cosine -1 on the left, and I'm taking cosine -1 on the right. So this is what's going in my calculator. I hit second cosine, and then I have 13 divided by 20. And I want to do this to the nearest degree. Okay, so put that in your calculator, second cosine, 13 divided by 20, and I get 49 degrees. On the right, I have angle B right here. The 42 is the hypotenuse because it's across from the right angle, and the 40 is opposite. So since I have opposite and hypotenuse, I'm going to use sine. So sine of B equals opposite over hypotenuse. All right, I got to get rid of the sine, so that means I'm going to do the inverse. So sine -1, 40 divided by 42. And again, I want to round it to the nearest degree. So do that in your calculator, and you should get 72 degrees. All right, we're going to practice more of these tomorrow. I want to show you one, though, where you have to come up with the picture on your own. So I have a 16-foot ladder leaning against a wall. So you're going to draw yourself a right triangle and then picture where everything is. The wall has to be this side right here, this vertical line. The ladder is the thing that's leaning against the wall. So this is my ladder. So the ladder is 16 feet tall. It's leaning against a wall. The foot of the ladder is the bottom of the ladder, is 7 feet from the wall. So this is 7 right here. And they want me to find the vertical distance from the ground to the point where the top of the ladder touches the wall. So actually I'm trying to find this right here. I'm going to find this side right here, the height of that wall from the bottom to where the ladder touches. I can't use trig because I don't have an angle. I have two sides. So I'm actually going to use my Pythagorean theorem. X squared plus 7 squared equals 16 squared. So Pythagorean theorem, remember, is used to find the missing side of a right triangle. 7 squared is 49. 16 squared is 256. So I'm going to subtract 49, and I get 207. And then I take the square root of 207, which is 14.4. So that's the height of the wall, or at least to where the ladder touches. Now for the second part, I want to find the measure of the angle formed by the ladder and the ground. So I want to find x down here. I'm going to use the 7, which is adjacent, and the 16, which is the hypotenuse. So because of that, I'm going to use cosine. Cosine of x equals 7 over 16. I'm trying to solve for x, so I have to get rid of the cosine. You have to get rid of the cosine, you're going to use that inverse. So second cosine, 7 divided by 16. All right, so second cosine, 7 divided by 16, and I get 64 degrees. All right, and I think that's it. Yep, that's it. So we will practice those tomorrow in class.